Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri and Lauren. What is killing me, I guess last week, is technical difficulty. That is why we did not have an episode. But what is killing me this week is I'm not positive we are playing a real game. I feel like we are existing in make-believe land for another week.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about this a little bit for OG fans because that's kind of the way I felt about this game in general. Like, it's one of those rare, genuine moments for me. And I was trying to think if there was another game like this for me where it's like, I don't, look, I can detach myself to a degree emotionally, right?
Sure.
I'm used to it. But there are very few times when they play someone where I'm like, look, if they lose, like, okay, they were supposed to lose. And if they win, like, awesome. It'll be a nice surprise and mean it, you know, because like, right. I always feel that way I used to feel that way before the Patriots games back in the day, you know, where I'd be like, yes, like we're not supposed to beat them. But then throughout the game, I'd let myself get like swept up and be like, oh, I want to beat them so much. I can't stand them. I don't hate the Chiefs like that, though. So I genuinely do feel like I could maintain that level of like disaffectedness of like, who cares? Like, if they blow us out, they're supposed to. If you know what I mean? If we lose a close one, I will have expected it literally the entire time.
I think this game actually comes at a really fortunate time because, you know, you and I thought we were going to see Jonathan Brooks in Germany. We did not, even after Miles Sanders went down. So this will be the first week they're working him in. Adam Thielen's still a question mark as to whether or not he's coming back. Ike Ekwonu is back. I think that you have to do some experimenting with what the offensive depth chart is going to look like going forward anyway. You know, if you lose this game by 42 points, I don't think we walk out of there thinking the Panthers are any worse than we did walking into there. So why not take advantage?
Right. Because as my brother literally texted, my brother who, again, you can read about it in my column, briefly raised my hopes of an iota of like, right. You know, like they'll be undefeated. They'll be super cocky. They'll be coming off a big emotional win. Then they lose. And then I text him back and he's like, they'll be pissed. It's a blowout. I'm like, great.
Yeah. Listen, that's before I read your column on Sunday evening when I was working on it, getting it ready for Monday morning. I had a similar thought as Buffalo was driving to take the lead right before halftime of, okay, this is going to be another big emotional comeback. I don't know off the top of my head what's ahead on the Chiefs' schedule, but this is going to take a lot out of them because this is a really good team they're doing this against this week. But at the end of the day, they didn't get it done. Does it still take a lot out of them? I don't know. I think that, maybe, you know, we have been maybe. I mean, we've been talking for the last 3 weeks now about is the improvement we have seen, whether it is out of Bryce, out of the defense, out of just the team in general. Do we know what is real and what is not? And I'm not necessarily sure that a real dive back to earth really tells us this week just how good or bad things are. If Bryce regresses, that's a problem. I'm not saying that's the case, but like if the defense cannot contain or cannot make a dent against Patrick Mahomes, it's a big deal. Nobody can.
I was going to say, zero expectations that they will do that because it's Patrick Mahomes. So like, I'm good. But the thing is too, here's the thing with the Panthers. This is always the bind you find yourself in. When you do try to detach and say to yourself, what's the worst there's the only thing worse than saying it can't get worse is saying what's the worst that could happen, because somehow they'll find a way to find the worst that can happen. And you'll be like, whoa, didn't even think of that possibility. Well, now that feels terrible. So like, it's hard for me to say, oh, there's no bad outcome, because I know they could find one. They could, if they work hard enough, they could find one. But yeah, like I'm with you. I mean, like if the defense can't stop Patrick Mahomes, like welcome to the NFL. Where no one seemingly really can. I mean, I was at the point when I think it was like a double-digit lead with like 2.5 minutes. And I'm like, how? I literally posted on
how are the Duke boys going to get themselves out of this one?
Yeah. Yeah. How are they going to get out of this one? How are the Chiefs going to get out of it? I was convinced they somehow would. I had no idea how.
Yeah.
But they didn't. And, they took their first loss, and they probably will be pissed and probably because they were already annoyed, right? Like we've heard that, like they're annoyed. Everyone's doubting them already because they haven't looked very good in their wins. They're going to be eager to try to prove a point. So any sleepiness or disaffectedness that they might have had against the Panthers probably went bye-bye, which is not good news for the Panthers, just like in general. And there's nothing they can do about that.
All right. If we are just talking about talent versus talent, the Panthers do not have a fighting chance in this game. But Lauren, I do want to read you what is ahead for the Chiefs. Okay. Because I'm not entirely convinced the letdown is just gone at this point after, or the ability for the letdown after the Panthers. Just listen, just hear me out. After the Panthers, the Chiefs welcome the Raiders, who we know are significantly worse than the Panthers. Okay.
Yeah.
If there's an angry game, like take it out on the school wimp, like that's the one, especially because after that, the Chiefs the Chiefs are at home again. So after the Raiders, the Chiefs play the Chargers, the team closest to them in the NFC West. And then after that, the Chiefs go to Cleveland, another kind of hopeless drifting team. Like it does sort of set up for if the Chiefs are going to struggle anywhere, this is the stretch where they could do it to themselves, not just get beat by better teams.
Maybe. I mean, look, it's worth considering, like maybe the Chiefs struggling in the first few weeks is indicative of actually something, you know what I mean? And like, maybe we don't have to just chalk it up to nothing because they won their first 9 games, but they were a struggle even against teams that they probably should have been blowing out, you would think.
Right.
But when you look at that stretch for them, to me, it's almost like analogous to like when you're cleaning out your room or something, right? And you start with the closet. And when you start with that closet, you got a lot of energy and you really just go after it and you crush that closet. But by the time you get to like underneath the sink, you're like, God, screw it, whatever. I'm just going to throw a bunch of this crap away. I don't even care anymore. Let me just finish this. That's the way I imagine them approaching this stretch of games. And then you add the fact that they just lost on top of that. That's where I feel like the danger lies. Like it'd be one thing if they beat Buffalo in another ugly one. And then I think the Panthers would be actually the beneficiary of that a little bit, because it's like you still keep escaping. But now, like, because they actually lost, Andy Reid has all these things he can point to. I mean, that's the tale as old as time in football, isn't it? Like, now because they lost only, now they have all this bad stuff they can point to.
The worst case scenario, and look, I think the worst case scenario is more likely than the best case scenario. I'm not telling you like I'm making the bold claim the Panthers are going to win. The worst case scenario is Ike Ekwonu is not as healthy as that is, and George Karlaftis just feasts on Bryce Young from the word go in this game. And then we're right back to wondering, well, did Bryce learn anything over these last 3 weeks? I could see what I'm saying is I can see if it's going to happen, how it happens. I'm not saying I believe it's going to happen.
Yeah,
who does believe it could happen is JayceeHorn. Did you see the comments he made to the Panthers media in the locker room after practice this week?
No, I missed that.
He seems to believe this defense is about to light the world on fire to the point that he says that he wanted to retract his comments from a couple of weeks ago when he said that this team is so bad we don't even know how to complete a tackle. He made the point that the lack of pass rush was a real problem. But once you start getting guys back, you realize how much the lack of a pass rush trickles back to create problems at every single level of the defense. DJ Wanham will be in his second game this week against Kansas City. He obviously had a huge game in Germany. Amari Barno is going to play his first game in almost a year. Like, you don't have a lot of teams that are literally getting reinforcements at this point of the season, and the Panthers are in an advantageous situation from that standpoint. I just don't think the reinforcements are very good.
That's literally what I was about to say. Because and look, he is right. that when he was to say that like they have improved since then, the retraction was a correct retraction. I respect it. I'm like, oh God, what did he say? Did he taunt the Chiefs? Please don't say he taunted the Chiefs. Thankfully, he kept it about the Panthers, which is good. And
I do to your point about not taunting the Chiefs. I do want to read you his quote, his like last quote, because I do think there is a very specific like, whoa. I want to be very clear what I'm saying here. His quote is, "The sky's the limit after this week."
Oh, I love that. It's a natural caveat built right in. It's like after we face this like superhuman, in the conversation for best quarterback ever, maybe then we'll reassess where this defense is after we see it against some normal quarterbacks. Okay, cool. Which is like accurate. I like that. But yeah, like, I mean, yeah, I think that that's all true. But what you said is also true. I do still think that he's right in the sense that like just having those guys back and like, they have talent. They are capable. They were better than they played at the beginning of the year. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were, because you couldn't be worse. Sorry, but you couldn't.
Right.
Like no one was punting against them. Derek Carr didn't punt. Okay. That's a problem for your defense. That's bad. Now they've improved some, they've gotten some reinforcements, right? Like it is getting better 100%. But like you said, the personnel just is what it is. And we've talked about that since the beginning of the year. Like the personnel, like they're not just going to all like magically become really, really good players. Are some guys working out a little better than even I thought? Like, yeah, probably so. But like, and it does all start up front. If you have no pass rush, you have no defense. And I think we've seen that all season long with this team.
Well, you and I talked about this really early in the season, like the huge difference in quarterback hit numbers that the Panthers opponents were having versus the Panthers. I mean, it seemed like, look, Derek Brown being gone changes everything about what the defensive line could do in penetration into the opposing backfield. I do think it is worth noting that through the first couple of weeks of the season, first like maybe 3 weeks of the season, you saw Jadeveon Clowney in the backfield a lot. He just couldn't complete the job, right? And maybe like DJ Wanham certainly was able to take advantage of Daniel Jones and the porous nature of just what the Giants have been in terms of protection this season. That's great. Do it against somebody with a pulse. And I'll be apt to believe that at least part of what JayceeHorn says is right, that getting bodies back is a luxury that they can take advantage of. I just don't know that the bodies are a luxury right now. The particular bodies are a luxury.
Yeah. The good news is that like plenty of NFL teams don't have a pulse. You know what I mean? Or varying degrees of a pulse, not a super strong one. Like it's there, but it's fate. So I mean, a lot of, they'll play other teams this year where I think their defensive line will do just fine. But will they also play teams where their defensive line will do next to nothing and they'll get carved up like a pumpkin? Absolutely. We've literally seen
of course.
It, so
I feel like this is worth mentioning because it is the first time in 2 years that the Panthers and Chiefs have met. We are not on Taylor Swift watch. Her representation says she is likely not making the trip to Charlotte. So any hopes that she might personally lobby Dave Tepper for a date at Bank of America Stadium in the future have to be put on.
Just one more bit of music he couldn't bring to Charlotte,
I'm sorry. Have you ever sung about a dirt road, a cold beer, and jeans that fit just right? I'm not sure I'm familiar with your music.
Well, if you have, that would be sang in Charlotte in the last few years.
Right. You have been invited personally by Dave Tepper. Either that or, as we often point out, Billy Joel. Sign up for OG fans today at ogtrianglemedia.com. Lauren mentioned that is where her Panthers columns show up each and every Monday. Her pop culture columns show up each and every Friday. And if you are trying to decide what is worth going to the movies to see or to stream, that is a really good resource. In fact, Lauren, I told you that my wife and I watched Disclaimer on your recommendation from one of your Friday columns.
Well, I'm sorry.
I didn't hate the ending as much as you did. I get why you hated it, and I don't think you're wrong, but it did not spoil the whole thing for me.
That's fair. I mean, there were some delicious performances, and obviously it's beautiful. So, I'll give it that.
Yeah. I mean, that certainly helps it. That's something I would not have known if I weren't reading what Lauren wrote on Friday. Coming out, if you are seeing this on Thursday, so came out just today, Mitch Northam, who is part of our women's college basketball show, broke down what the biggest question is about each of the Triangle's top women's college teams. I think it is very much worth the read. You could sign up for OG fans and get all of that stuff by going to ogtrianglemedia.com. And by the way, we just announced a new show with our buddy Beaumonty Jones in January at the Rialto. Tickets go on sale this week, and if you are an OG fan subscriber, you are going to get a discount code for those tickets. So that might be worth signing up all by its lonesome. Go to ogtrianglemedia.com today. Lauren Brownlow, I want to talk about some things that some former Panthers have said this week, because you have a couple of guys that left the teams recently that have two very different reactions when asked about their time in Carolina. Donte Jackson, who was, of course, part of the trade that brought Deontay Johnson to Charlotte from Pittsburgh, asked if coming off of the big win against Baltimore last week, the Steelers were walking into a trap game, and had he ever experienced that before? And he says spending time in Carolina means you don't know what a trap game is.
I mean, I was going to say, I was like, probably not, because, if anything, he knows what it's like to be someone else's. But that doesn't even happen to the Panthers that often. I wish it did, but.
Yeah, I'm sure. Gosh. Yeah.
Maybe the Packers last year? That's the closest.
Yeah, but they won. I feel like a trap game you kind of have to lose, right?
I mean, I guess, but just the notion of that and like the fallout that can occur. Yes.
Yeah, I would say, even though we did not know how good they were turning into, I would say the Texans might have qualified as a trap game, just because of how much of that game's narrative turned into CJ versus Bryce. And at the end of the day, that really wasn't where the game was won or lost.
Yeah, people hate it. The dumb quarterback discourse in the NFL really hated that game, which I loved. So,
the other former Panther that spoke this week was Jonathan Mingo, now a member of the Dallas Cowboys. Mingo was less interested in throwing shade, and it was almost like,
why did he drop it?
No. Oh, Lauren Brownlow. See, here I am.
Also, like, look where you now are. Like,
listen,
P.S.
Anyway. I'm trying to show the man some kindness in the Thanksgiving season, and you are just making him feel terrible. I picture him sitting at his multi-billion-dollar locker, head in his hands, looking at a photograph of Bryce Young, wondering why he let him down. He said that he was blindsided by the trade. In fact, literally hours before, his agent had told him, I don't think you are on the move today. And then suddenly he was headed to Dallas. And then the thing that he said, he is embracing being a Cowboy. He hopes to be a contributor to the team, but quote, hang on, let me get the quote so I have it right. But quote, I do wish I was able to be more consistent for the team that drafted me into the NFL. We talked about this before the season, right? There was that interview he did with Joe Person from The Athletic before the season where he seeed very aware that it was carelessness that
I
was
just
causing
making jokes.
I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, my point is, like, he seemed very aware that it was trying to be everything on one play that was, causing some of these easy catches to be drops. Now, there were times we certainly saw, like towards the end of last season, he made some catches along the sideline where you're like, oh man, that's what this can be. But I think, honestly, Lauren, after game one, it was pretty clear it was never going to be that, at least not here.
Yeah. And look, I think we and Panthers fans in general, especially the lifers like me and the old people like me, we have too much experience with this in our lives of like a very promising, fast, all the talent that you would want receiver that cannot catch. We have seen too many of them, right. And it's kind of important. It's kind of an important part of it, as it turns out. And it's very frustrating because you just want to go like, it's part of the reason I think we were so gentle with Ted Ginn Jr. because A, we already knew this was like an issue for him, but B, like he improved it and got better. We have not seen that as fans very often. It's like when someone gets the oopsie dropsies with us, they don't go away. It's like the yips or like some kind of like weird, whatever you want to call it. It's like when that gets psychologically in somebody's head, it feels like as a receiver, or like you're the type of receiver that can make like the really difficult catches. There are receivers like this too, the ones that can make like the insane catches, but can't catch like, well, we'll drop like half the routine like screen passes or slants or whatever.
Right.
Like, you know,
right.
Yeah,
and I think that kind of describes what Mingo's problem was if all you had to focus on was contorting your body to secure the catch, and you knew you were hitting the ground, stepping out of bounds, whatever after, okay, I can focus on completing this catch. If it was a screen, he was trying to figure out, before the ball was even in his hands, he was trying to figure out where he could go to break the 50-yard run on it. The Panthers are not alone in drafting these guys where you see if it all comes together, it's going to be great, and it just never all coming together. But you're right. The Panthers seem to consistently have one of those guys on the roster. And maybe, look, I'm not...
Dwayne Jarrett, Kelvin Benjamin, Legade Nanu. I mean, I'm just naming the ones that come to my mind. To be honest, like Ian Thomas. You know, he's had that issue a lot. Like, I guess
Dwayne Jarrett was the one I thought of immediately.
Jarrett, yeah. That's right. See, they all blend together in a cacophony of suckiness and sadness in my mind. The suckiness being that they can't hang on to it, not that they're like whatever, but you know what I mean. But that's why we all were so patient with Ted Ginn. People were like, "Wow, you guys really like Ted Ginn." It's like, yes, because we have seen a rehabbed and reformed dropper. We love it.
Right. I want to end by going from, one in a string of problems to the most unique Panther ever, maybe the most unique NFL personality ever, in CamNewton. He, on his podcast last week, talked about his relationship with the team now. And Lauren, it is honestly, and I'll let you go to town on this because you probably feel this deeper than I do. It's heartbreaking to hear that not only is the relationship bad, but Cam had no idea it was bad.
Yeah. I mean, I love everything Cam ever did for this place. He was mistreated here. He was not handled with care. I think his career was unnecessarily shortened by the way that this team cared for him or didn't. It's just, I'm always going to feel that way about it.
I believe to this day that certainly Dave Gettleman, if not Marty Hurney too, actively disliked CamNewton, and their roster management suggests I am correct.
All he has done is give everything in him for the franchise as a whole and the team and Charlotte. Yeah. That's all he has ever done.
I want to, before you go on, I want to give context to what you're saying. This is how this came up. On his podcast, 4th and 1, he and his co-hosts were watching videos of Steve Smith and Luke Kuechly and I believe Thomas Davis in Germany. And his co-host asked, would you have accepted a trip? Would you have accepted going with the team if you had been asked? And Cam very simply said, I guess we'll never know. And I'll play you in a second a clip of what he said, but it ended with him saying in an exhausted and frankly very sad way. And I mean that Cam is sad about it, not, this is a sad thing. He just says the words that you just said. I gave everything to that city, and it broke my heart, even as somebody that certainly disliked the college Cam, and it took a while to come around to as an NFL quarterback. But this team, for whatever reason, this franchise just doesn't seem to get what a cultural moment for the NFL Cam's MVP season was.
Yeah, I agree. And they could lean into it and celebrate it and whatever, and they won't. But my thing is, like, even back in the day, I was always saying, not to him where he could hear, obviously, because he doesn't know who I am. But I would whatever media I was on, I would say it. I wish he would say more about it. I wish he would speak up for himself, because a lot of the issues that he ended up having, he took a lot of the blame for, unfairly, in my opinion. It was just like, oh, he's just washed now. It's like, well, do we know why? I still believe that very strongly, that if his shoulder had been handled differently, he would have had more time in the league. Now, did he say, I'm going to play through it and all that? Yeah, maybe, but the team's supposed to make those decisions for you. Like, that's literally their job. And so I think that they should have taken far better care of him. I also think, like, it's super rich for David Tepper, of all people, to not want to continue to hold Cam in this place when he could literally use Cam as a human shield if he wanted to. But he wants people to love him so badly in him and not Cam, right? That, like, he can't recognize that the only thing he ever did for this team that made everybody go, thank you so much, wow, that was an awesome move, was when he brought Cam back in.
Right. And gave him the chance to go out as a Panther, like, because that is what deserve to happen. I'm going to play you a clip from the podcast real quick. And this is Cam sort of talking about realizing that something was wrong that he was not aware of. You're going to have to turn up. I'm talking to the listeners, and probably you too, Lauren. Like, you're going to have to turn this up. This is from his podcast. I cannot control the cheesy music and the level of it underneath. So listen closely here.
People don't know this story, but I'm going to tell it. I don't have no quarrel with David Tepper. I don't have no quarrel with nobody in the Panthers organization. I speak my mind unbiasedly, no matter who and what franchise it is. Last year, we had a 7-on-7 tournament in Charlotte. Correct. We went into the Panthers facility. And you mean to tell me one of the greatest Panthers to ever play ain't up nowhere? I'm talking nowhere. Who brought it to my attention? My son. How old is my son, Peggy?
8. He 8 now?
He 8. So as a man, when you have to explain to your son, Daddy, where's your picture? Yeah. At this particular point in time, the question was, oh, we don't know if Cam's retired yet. Newsflash, I'm never going to retire. I know I've played my last piece of football. It don't matter to me to officially retire.
I understand from a certain standpoint. I understand the Panthers wanting to wait until Cam is officially retired for the big public acknowledgement. However, I think there's some really important context here. Number one, there's no reason that you should not have him up in the facility, photos of him up in the facility right now. Even a photo of him accepting the MVP award, right? Like, that should be up somewhere. He's the only one in franchise history to ever receive it. The other thing that I thought about as I was listening to this, and Lauren, I will tell you, I went looking for this because I wanted to put it up on screen. I'm convinced the Panthers have deleted this because of the public blowback they got. A few years ago, the Panthers tweeted out an image that was the franchise Mount Rushmore. And the franchise Mount Rushmore included Sam Mills, included Steve Smith, I believe included
Peppers.
Luke Kuechly and Julius Peppers. And overwhelmingly, the replies were not the only player in franchise history to win an MVP award, not the only player in franchise history to take the team to the Super Bowl by himself. I mean, there is a history here of the Panthers under Dave Tepper's leadership for sure. But as you outline, like, whatever the weirdness is between, Cam and the team goes back before that, there's a history of him being openly disrespected by this team.
I mean, look, some of it is an inherent way that I think a lot of franchises treat quarterbacks, right? They're a commodity. They're to be used and thrown out when they're no longer useful to you. But a lot of teams do really rely on their history and, like, the things in their history that resonate with people. And so, especially in a city like Charlotte that is, racially diverse and someone who meant a lot to Black people and white people too, but definitely Black people in a different way. He was important to them in a different way. And, like, to shove that to the side and, like, pretend it never happened or just not acknowledge it, certainly not to celebrate it, it doesn't send a very good message. It wouldn't to me, to anyone that you're trying to bring in to be like, oh, we understand And, we understand what he brought to us and we appreciate it and we want to celebrate
Lauren, Cleveland still makes a big deal out of Bernie Kosar, who didn't accomplish anything close to what Cam did for the Panthers. And, to your point about Cam being beloved by the Black community in Charlotte, I would argue that certainly, look, that is definitely true. Really? Yeah. I would also argue that Cam made it very easy for transplants to embrace the Panthers because he made them worth paying attention to in a division where nobody was good, right? Historically, nobody has been able to put a stranglehold on the division, the NFC South, the way that, say, the Patriots had on the AFC East for a long time. Cam was must-see TV. Whatever the Panthers were doing was going to be high in every highlight package because of him. He was a transformational figure for what it meant to be a fan of this team. And I think it's bananas. Like, and I'm saying this not to dismiss the racial element, but for people
that's true. You're right about
that shuts down the conversation in their mind. Here's another non-racial reason that, like, it's still insane.
Well, it's just an element I wanted to acknowledge because I do think important.
Yes,
you're right.
It has to be acknowledged because look at the way that Cam got treated for not wearing a tie when on the team plane one time, when as weird as you or me or any other white guy, and probably most Black guys too, for that matter, think the way Cam dresses is, he has probably spent more on whatever he is wearing than we have spent on our entire closet, right? You cannot act like the dude does not respect whatever room it is he is in because he happens to be wearing a foxtail. That foxtail probably costs $12,000.
I've sat through Matt Rule. I've never been more mad at a coaching decision as a Panthers fan in my life. Okay. Yeah. I broke things that day. I was furious. I was so mad. But it's like that. And it's disrespectful. And then there were a lot of times where, like, they wouldn't hesitate to not throw him under the bus is maybe the wrong language, but a little bit, like, they wouldn't hesitate to blame losses on him and whatever. And it just, every little dig like that just got under my skin because, like you said, you know what he did? He made liking the Panthers cool.
Yes.
Just beyond racial, like you said. That's not racial. That's just, he made it cool because he's so magnetic and such a celebrity presence and whatever that he made liking them cool.
I've never seen a bona fide superstar in the league be treated in that kind of goofy way that a bad manager like wants to show, hey, nobody is above the rules. Nobody's above the law. I've never seen a dude that means as much to his team as Cam meant to the Panthers. And yeah, I'm including Brady and Manning in that. When you look at the cast around them versus the cast around Cam, I've never seen a guy that means as much to his team as Cam means to the Panthers be treated as an example to the rest of his teammates as often as the Panthers wanted to do that to him.
Yes, I agree. And just, I feel like I was always screaming at him to realize it. Cause I'm like, it's like watching, I mean, I'm not trying to one-to-one and analogize it, but like, it's like watching a friend in a bad relationship with someone who doesn't love them. And someone who says they love them and wants to act like they do, but treats them terribly. And you're just like, please see that you could do better. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like, please, you could do better. Like, this isn't right the way they're treating you. Like, I used to yell this at my screen constantly about Cam. Like, I'm like, they don't treat you right. And they didn't. And it's hard. You sometimes just like have to, you want the owner to be like an arbiter a little bit of like, okay, understand what the fans want and do your best to give it to us. You know, obviously you want to find success and it's not a democracy. Like we're not voting. We're not the Packers, right? But at the same time, it's like, understand what we want and what we love and give that to us. And a lot of owners don't do that. Right. But in this case, it's like, this would be such an easy W for him. And yet he just can't stand the idea of someone being loved more than him. You can't pay us to love you. You can't make us. Sorry. This, you can't make us love you. Maybe you could do things that we like so that maybe we have a chance to not hate you. Like maybe try that for one. I don't know.
I mean, if you're Dave Tepper you have to look in the mirror and realize that you being on the field to present Sam Mills' wife with his Hall of Fame championship or his Hall of Fame induction ring. Sam Mills, the beloved symbol of this franchise, a man who lost his life to a very valiant fight with cancer. They still hate you enough to boo you in that moment.
All he has to do is have Cam in the tweet.
Exactly.
Literally.
Exactly.
Have Cam in the tweet with you.
This should be the ball sitting. This should be the ball sitting on the rim of the cup, and all you have to do is tap it in. And every time he pulls out the driver and wails it across the fairway or across the course, not understanding why it didn't go in the hole.
Yeah, I mean, I
probably would have been less clunky if I had chosen a sport other than golf for the analogy.
No, I mean, I'm with you, and it is infuriating. It's always been very frustrating to me. I hate that. In some ways, I hate that he knows this, because I feel like he was probably happier.
Cam or Tepper?
Cam, because I feel like he was probably happier not knowing and not thinking that, not looking back and maybe saying, wow, maybe they never actually, because that's the thing when your friend, when you tell them and they start to realize oh, wait, this is a pattern of behavior that goes back a long ways. Oh no, maybe my last relationship I also had was bad, whatever. You know what I mean? It's oh no, maybe I am letting people treat me this way because and that's the thing. You just want him to see it for himself and to understand that he protected this team a lot. He could leak stuff to the media about how poorly, you know what I mean? He could have complained to his sources. He never did any of that shit ever. He never did. He never said, wow, I don't have anybody around me. This sucks. My O-line sucks. He never did any of that. Never. And he could have. And it's so irritating. Whatever.